Hi everybody, welcome back to another Advice Line live event. And this is our Q&A following on from Peter's presentation of how to become your own coach. We're delighted to welcome back Peter Vermeulen to answer some of your questions that you've been sending in to us. So welcome back, Peter, and thank you very much for your really insightful presentation that you gave last week. It was really interesting and covered so many really useful strategies for people to use, particularly, as you say in your presentation, right now when things are a bit topsy-turvy, and it's important more than ever for us to look after ourselves. So we have a few questions that people have sent in to us, if you're ready.
I'm ready, yes.
Okey-doke. So the first question we have here is from a parent of two children with autism. And what she says is, as a parent of two children with autism, I find myself drained, bored, exhausted and irritated with the situation. My youngest is really interested in technology and goes on and on about his latest discovery that he's really enjoying. I find it really hard to stay interested and listening and supportive, that I feel like I'm being unkind about it. Sometimes, and we've all done this as parents, sometimes I hide in the toilet just to disappear from it for a little while. It's the same with my oldest. I'm alone with them most of the time, and I feel really kind of empty. How do I coach myself to become a better mother? I'm feeling disappointed.
Okay, let me start with saying you're not a bad mom. You know, right now, especially if you're a single parent, you have to live with your two children all the time. And in non-COVID times, they can talk about their special interest to different people. For instance, at school, they can talk about it to their peers, to the teacher, to support workers. And now everything comes down to you as a mom. That means that you have to take in what normally maybe 3, 4, 5, or even 10 people take in a day. And I think rather than empty, maybe you're too full of what your kids are saying. To be sure, you're not a bad mom if you're tired of certain behaviors of your child, whether that child is autistic or not. It's perfectly normal at a given moment to say, I'm full, can't take it in anymore, because we all have our limits. So you're not becoming a better mom by forcing yourself to take in even more that you can. The first thing to do is to accept your limits. And again, it's perfectly normal that you can say at a given moment, I've had enough of this. This discovery, how nice it is, but I don't want to listen to the discovery anymore. The only thing is that if you do that at a moment that you think I should go to the bathroom again and cover my ears, then it will become too sudden to your children. Your children, if they are autistic, they need a lot of predictability. So I would advise you to make the amount of talking about the tech object, about the special interest, about the discovery, to make it more predictable. And there's several ways of doing that. For instance, you could use a green card and a red card. And a green card says, Mommy is ready to listen to your talk about your discovery. And you hang it up on the fridge or on a place in the house where your kids can see them. And the moment you feel, oh, okay, I'm getting to the edge of what I can take in, you change it to the red card. Red card means no talking about the discovery, no talking about. In that way, and please do this before you need to run to the bathroom, because if you need to run to the bathroom, that means you won't be clear in your communication anymore, because you will be tired or empty the feeling that you use. You could also do something else. Why don't you plan the talking about the special interest? And planning could be that there are certain times in the day that you say every time after we had a snack or a meal, then you can talk about the special interests. You could again visualize that with that discovery, a picture of that. And if it's visible, you can talk about it. If not, you can relate it to a certain place in the house and saying, look, when we're sitting at the table, then You can talk about your special interest. When we're sitting in the couch and mommy is kind of relaxing and reading a book on the couch, no talking. So try to make it more predictable. And, you know, you're not going to be a bad mom if you do that. On the contrary, what you're doing is teaching your children that it is okay to talk about your own interests, but sometimes people want to talk about their interest as well. So actually you're preparing your kids for the future, where not everybody will always be willing or even able to listen to their stories about their special interests. So it sounds like hard if you limit the talking about the special interest, but actually you're doing them a big favor, because if they know when they can talk about it and when not, it gives predictability. Predictability means less stress. And, you know, talking about the special interest is often one of the things that kids do to get rid of their stress. They go back to the part of the world that they know and that they are very competent at. So you're actually doing them a big favor if you would say, mommy, no, mom is empty now, can't come in anymore. It's okay to do that. And you're certainly not a bad mom, because I must admire parents, especially single parents, who now have to take all these different roles. They have to be teacher, they have to be mom, they have to still do the chores at the household. You know, they have to be the friends and replace the peers and the friends of their children. You know, that's a lot of different tasks and roles. So my last advice is, if you indeed want to become a better mom, please take some me time, because you can only be a good mom if you feel well yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, isn't it? That parents do have time to sort of relax for themselves. And I think your point you made in your presentation about securing your own oxygen mask before you try to support anybody else's. And I think in this particular case as well, one of the points that resonated for me was around, you know, it's okay to reach out to people and get some support to be your own coach. So I think, you know, if this particular mum feels that she would like to reach out, then, you know, absolutely, please do reach out to us, and we can be your support while you're trying to manage the situation that you have at home. I echo what you say. Single parents at this time are having to be everything to everyone, and it's a really hard place to be in. So I hope that answered your question there. So the next question we have here is from an autistic person, and he's asking, what methods are advisable in trying to chat with somebody in a social environment?
Okay. Now, there's many things that can be done, and you know, there's a lot of social skills training. But to me, when autistic people say, I want to have friends, I want to have a relationship, I want to get in touch with other people, and the very beginning is to start chatting with other people, I use a metaphor. Metaphor means I use a kind of comparison which is not reality. And when autistic people want to get connected to non-autistic people, it is like if you're going into a completely different culture, because autistic and non-autistic brains have a different approach to the world. Now, imagine yourself that you go to a different country with a complete different culture that you don't know. What would you do? Well, what I would do is I would ask for a coach or a guide that explains me about that different culture. Because without a guide, you can try all kind of recipes that, for instance, you can take with you a book with very common phrases in the other language. For instance, if you go to Italy, you can learn with a book to say hello, good afternoon. But I can guarantee you, sooner or later, there will be misunderstandings, because you don't know the culture and the other people don't know your culture. So what helps is someone who's kind of an interpreter. Now, this is the metaphor that I use, because we're not talking about going to a different country here. We're talking about you wanting to get involved in conversations with other people. Well, I would advise you to get yourself a coach there. That could be a counselor, that could be a psychologist, who translates what the non-autistic people like in conversations, but also who can help you to translate your behavior to them. Because the tricky thing about relationships is there are no fixed rules. So therefore, I cannot give you a set of rules and say, do this, then do that, and then you will be successful in chatting with other people. Because if I would give you the rules, I would only make you fail. And then you would feel bad about yourself, because then you would think you're not doing good. The thing about conversations and chatting with other people is there are no rules. You know, Temple Grandin, which is a well-known lady on the spectrum, she once wrote a book together with another autistic person, Sam Barron, to coach her autistic peers in navigating the social world. It was all about relationships. And she put in there the rules for relating to other people. And rule number 1 in that book is there are no rules. They are context and people dependent. So therefore, what advice? There is no specific rule I can give you. Well, there's one thing that I could say. Don't focus too much on chatting, because then you immediately look for the most difficult part in getting connected to other people. An easier way to get connected to other people is not having conversations and talking, but doing things together. So maybe a good advice would be look at your own interest and then try to find a club or a place where other people come together doing the same interest. That interest could be sport activity, that could be a hobby club, that could be an art club, that could be a quiz club, you know. And doing things is actually easier, because then you don't have to talk, then there's less misunderstandings. That's more concrete. The moment, and it will be easier to start a conversation, because then you don't have to figure out what the other people want to hear, what is polite in this case, what is socially appropriate, because you can just talk about the things you see and the things you're doing. That might be a little bit easier. But please, my advice is go and find a coach that can be the interpreter between you and the non-autistic world.
Great advice. Thank you, Peter. So another question that we have here from somebody is, what would you say is the most important thing to focus on right now to start becoming your own life coach, but also manage any anxieties and uncertainties that autistic people may be facing at this time?
Okay. Well, as I said in my presentation, there's 4 areas where you can coach yourself. You know, the physical exercise, your body, the pampering yourself, the doing the flow activities, and then managing your thoughts. Now, this is especially about the last part, the anxiety. The first thing to do is, again, as I said with the control chart, don't try to fight your anxieties and your worries. That's maybe you can win a battle, and that means one day it will work, but you will lose the war. So if you're anxious, if you're worried, that's okay. But don't let the worries take over. So I ended my presentation with saying maybe the most important thing to start with in becoming your own coach is take an agenda or make one and start filling in what you will do. Planning your behaviors, not just saying, okay, I should be less worried, I'm going to try to think positively. No, write down when you will think positive things. But when it comes to anxieties and worries, you know, it's one way to control them, and it's not to fight them, but to be in control of your own anxiety and your worry. You know, the further you push them away, the harder it will be. Imagine that your worries, it's kind of something that weighs on your shoulders. It's a weight you carry. Now, if you had to walk with the worries holding like that, you would feel pain in your arms after maybe 10 meters, 15 meters. So the thing is to cherish, to take it closer. You will be able to walk further with heavy weight if you take it closer. And that means accept your worries and anxieties, but then go and plan them as well. So I'm a big favor of so-called worry time. Plan it in your day and say, okay, today I'm going to worry from, let's say, 11 to 11:15, and plan it maybe several times a day. If you are a person that constantly worries, plan it several times a day and connect it to a specific place as well. For instance, the worry chair. Pick out one chair in your house, put it in a certain location, and that's your worry chair. And plan it and go and sit there and say, no, I'm going to worry and be anxious. And the remarkable thing that you will notice is it will be pretty hard to worry because you're sitting there and you give yourself the instruction to worry. And at that time, your brain will say, wait a minute, that's not the way that I'm used to worry. Normally, things pop up spontaneously. So it's a kind of a paradox. I know that, but plan some worry time. That will not mean that from time to time during a day, your anxiety or your worries will not pop up. The moment they pop up, say, oh, wait a minute, I have a chair for that. Go and sit on the chair. Obviously, this is more difficult if you go outside of the home, but then plan when you return home to sit on your worry chair again the time you come back home. And allow yourself to worry there, but set a limit and say, okay, I'm allowed to worry here for, and it depends, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you decide. It's up to you. And this is all, again, about control. Remember that I started the presentation with Martin Seligman's stories with the dogs and the control. Well, you cannot get rid of your anxieties and worries. You shouldn't, but you can, up to a certain point, again, I'm realistic here, up to a certain point, you can control your anxiety.
I think, like you said in your presentation, I think a lot of the time we're told it's not okay to worry, that we shouldn't worry, and that's negative. I think it's really refreshing to hear that it's okay to worry, and I think a lot of people will find that very useful. To almost give yourself permission to worry, and that it's okay for you to do that. So
yes, because I want to meet the first person who hasn't had any worries in this COVID crisis.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
Well, it's human. It's human. It's normal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the last question we have here is from a parent of an autistic gentleman. He says, my son has Asperger's and his coping strategy is to cope outside of the home, and he uses lots of his coping strategies to deal with the outside world. But when he comes home, he gets very frustrated and takes it out on myself and my wife. He's 19 years old and understandably is becoming a lot more independent, but as a result has effectively ceased his engagement with his family. They're terribly worried about him. How can we help him?
Okay. Now, the fact that he wants to cope outside and to show that he's coping and that he's strong is actually good. That says that he has a lot of motivation to make it out there in the world. The only thing is that probably he a little bit underestimates the limits of that, or overestimates his coping strategies. And that's where you could help. You could, and the first thing to say is, it's okay that you do that again. It's okay to try to act as normal as possible and to be strong and to show that you can cope. But all of us have our limits. Whether you're autistic or not. And what we see is when you come home, that probably you went a little bit into the red zone. You did a little bit too much. And then it's very understandable and it's very human that if you have gone into the red zone, that you need to do things that make you, again, feel better. As a parent, even when your son is an adult, you're allowed to say there are certain behaviors that we accept as relaxation, as de-stressing, as coping strategies. There's certain behaviors that we don't accept because we're living here together. So there are certain rules, but we see the need there for you. So I think as parents, sit together with your son, be clear about saying, look, this is hard for us as well. Because maybe he even doesn't know that he has this effect on you. Be honest and be open about it, but address the need and say, we understand that when you come home, you're maybe so full in your head, or you're so chaotic, you're so, over the edge, that you need to do things. And then try to sit together and say, okay, let's find out together what things you could do when you come home to get rid of all the stress and the frustrations you had out there, but that are not, having a negative effect on the harmony in our family and on the relationship we have. And again, maybe he will not know about strategies, but you can propose, and not saying you should do this or you cannot do this. Now say, let's make a plan. But the most important thing about it is that when he comes back home from getting outside, that there is again this kind of transition time where you create the opportunity for him, together with him, to say, look, the first 15 or 20 minutes, we won't ask you, for instance, about how was it out there? How was the shopping? How was the meeting? Because if the head is full and you come home and you went into the red zone and people start asking questions with good intentions because you want to know how he did, that's too much. And then I can understand that the head explodes. So give him the time to make the transition from a very stressful and demanding world outside to the safe environment at home. Because if he feels the home as a safe environment, that will also help him to engage in other coping strategies to de-stress at home when he gets home. So instead of a worry chair here, you could say, look, there's, like a zone, and we leave you alone for 15 minutes. And when you're ready, we can ask you how your day was. Maybe also look together with him what kind of activity that you can do. Think about the flow activities that I mentioned last time, or the pampering yourself. What can he do to pamper himself? A favorite drink, for instance, and sitting there and doing nothing. And he doesn't have to talk. He doesn't have to help in the household. You don't expect anything at that moment, except that he pampers himself. You could also ask, how can we help you? But I can understand that adults will preferably not want you to do things, because that puts them again in the position, I'm not a child anymore. I can do this myself. Well, say, yes, you can, but let's find out together. But be clear about the behaviors that are stressful for you, because maybe he doesn't even know that.
That's great advice. Great advice. I think really useful for us all, actually, when we've come home, particularly as you say right now, come home and have that give ourselves permission to have that pamper time and that relaxation time. So really great. So thank you very much, Peter. That brings us to the end of our questions that we've had sent in. So thank you to everybody who sent a question in, and anybody who watched Peter's session on how to be a coach. If you didn't have a chance to watch it, I really recommend you go back and have a look at it, because it really is very, very insightful. There's lots of really useful information in there. So we have a range of resources available to people that we've developed, particularly during this time, and you can access them on our website. So we have resources around COVID-19 and how to support yourself, and what does it mean, and explaining it to people, particularly as now the situation here in Scotland is starting to develop, and we're starting to see changes into the way in which we're dealing with the current crisis. Then we've got lots of resources around education and how to support learning in the home, and lots of information about well-being that you can access on our website as well. We also have our extended advice line plus, and you can now reach one of our autism advisors between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. at night. We're really pleased to be able to extend that from our usual opening hours. We've now also embedded a live chat function on our website where you can get in contact with an advisor in real time, and they'll be able to chat through your questions through our live chat. We also have a call for a chat facility on our website where you can register with us, and one of our advisors will give you a call back and really just see how you are, and maybe can be some of that support network for you during this time. We have our Facebook groups now. We're really pleased to have been able to launch those. So we have our Scottish Autism Affinity group, which is solely for autistic individuals or those that identify as having autism or maybe on the diagnostic pathway. And it's a really good opportunity to build relationships and network with other autistic individuals across Scotland. We also have our Ask an Advisor and our parent and carer groups, where you can ask questions and get support and advice. We also have our COVID autism alert card on our website, and rather than having to send away for anything, you can download it onto your tablet or phone, so that if you need to explain why you might be out visiting certain spaces that may be off limits, then you have that card there for you, so you can go down and download that. But we've got lots and lots of information, and we're continually updating it on our website, so please do visit there. So our upcoming events, we're really fortunate to have Peter returning for another Autism Advice Line live event on Thursday, the 11th of June. Peter will be talking about free time management. So, you know, what to do with that unstructured time, which I think will be particularly relevant to a lot of families here in Scotland, because that's not long before the school holidays start. So we might not have as much sort of homeschooling structure in place. So I think that'll be really useful. So that's Thursday, the 11th of June. You can watch Peter's presentation on that. If you have any questions for Peter following that event, then please do send them in to us, because we will be holding another Q&A with Peter on Thursday, the 18th of June. You can email your questions to events@scottishautism.org, or if you would prefer, you can send us a message via our Facebook groups or via a private message on Facebook or on Twitter. So all leaves to say is thank you very much to Peter Vermeulen for joining us for this question and answer session, and thank you for joining us and watching. You can keep up to date with all the latest things that we're doing through our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube and Instagram pages. We really are across the whole social media platforms there, and you can sign up to receive information about our events at the web address below. Also, Peter is well worth a follow on his Twitter page, and you can see his Twitter handle there and his website at the bottom. Again, lots of really good information and links to some great resources on his website as well. So thanks very much for joining us.